Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to another weekly wrap up. This one is week 33 of 2022 and we have 12 books to talk about today. Some controversial ones, some upcoming releases, some rereads. Like, it was quite the week and I'm actually really proud that I got through 12 books because I did go visit my sister and my parents for the first 3 days of the week, and we were doing all kinds of things. We were making mozzarella cheese, we were making butter. My dad was showing off his farm animals now. We have a milk cow back home. I took my nieces mini golfing with my sister. It was so much fun. And if you would love to see those antics, I do vlog quite often for my patrons. Those are my bonus videos that I make for patrons who support me. And I'm definitely a little more raw and open about certain things. Not necessarily that I like hide things from you guys here, but I'm just more willing to share my family and my like behind the scenes self. Maybe not my so put together beauty that I am in front of the camera with my patrons. So if that's something you're interested in, my behind the scene vlogs actually start at the $10 and above level, but I definitely have some other levels there where you can support me. And speaking of those who support me, I have a few new patrons and a channel member to welcome. So we're starting out with some shout outs here. I have Allison who joined. Looks like she's from Canada. So hello, Allison from Canada. Welcome to the Book Refuge patronage, and I very much appreciate you. And then I don't have a first name. I just have a screen name for this person, and it's Scorpio Baby. And I mean, I like that name. It's great. Thank you so much for supporting me here and helping me able to do what I do every day. And oh boy, it makes me so happy. It makes me feel very loved. And then the new channel member we have is Taylor Holder. So Taylor, thank you so much for joining at the Faded Friend level. I hope you're enjoying the benefits so far. This video will be, I think, like your first benefit that you get from me, an early preview of this video. All videos that I make go into preview for my channel members first at the dedicated diva level and above, and sometimes that's up to a week early. Sometimes it's just the night before, like a vlog I put out earlier this week. I wanted the vlog to go up immediately, so it was only in preview for the night before, but you get a heads up on everyone else, get to be the first commenters, and you also get priority answer to comments too, just because I do get a lot of comments these days. And my channel members, they have a little symbol by their name and they just get the love first. That's how it goes. So anyway, enough of that. Very thankful for who literally keeps the lights on around here. But we are going to get into the books I've read. If you're new here, for some reason this is the first video you stumbled upon, I do these weekly wrap-ups to talk about every single book that I've read, because I can't really do bi-monthly or monthly wrap-ups because I would have sometimes 50 to 70 books to talk about in those, and it just becomes very overwhelming both for me to film and edit and for people to watch, even though, I mean, I myself know that I've watched an hour-and-a-half video, no problem. It's a pain in the butt to edit and upload, and it's just not great. So I do these weekly videos. I have a playlist that I will link that has, 32 previous weekly wrap-ups, and in it I talk about all of the 365 books I've read this year. Yes, I just hit my Goodreads goal. It doesn't say so on Goodreads, but I've read 12 books that don't exist on Goodreads because they were fanfic or something along those lines. But I've read 365 books this year, and I talk about every single one in these weekly wrap-ups. So that's enough time wasted. But I do have my notes in front of me. That's what I'll be looking at because I fill out a little form about each book I read so that when I do these, I know what I'm talking about. So let me take a drink and let's dive in. First up, I finished my reread of Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas. Yes, I know this cover is absolutely gorgeous. This is a reread for the SJM Along that I created and co-host with some of my friends. We are rereading all of Sarah J. Maas's works in publication order, which means we've been jumping back and forth between Throne of Glass and ACOTAR so far. We'll eventually add in Crescent City when we get up to those. And this is the one that I was very much looking forward to rereading because I believe this one was my favorite book the first time through the series. I just really love a lot of the things that culminate in this book. I'm obviously not going to go much into this one just because this is a reread and also we're book 5 into a series, so it's hard to just jump in. I will say I still love my Precious Rowan in here. I love the character development of Manon Blackbeak in this book. Just, she's fire. I love her. And who else? Yeah, I really appreciate her in this book. So I absolutely loved rereading this book, and Sarah J. Maas does it so well. We also get some of our first door open smut in the series. We only get it alluded to previously, and we get a full one in this one. It still is like a 2 on the spice scale, but it is a pretty epic, all the elements involved scene in this one, and I really, really love getting some of that. And it does have a very painful cliffhanger, and this is the book I've been saying was going to test people on if they were going to stick with the reading order that I've put in place, or if they wanted to, jump into Tower of Dawn and Kingdom of Ash because they just can't wait. I completely understand if they do. There is no judgment. The reading order is just so that we can see when Sarah was laying hints along the way. There are some amazing hints in this one. If you want to go over that with us, you can, number one, check out the SJM Along playlist that I have. We have live shows for every book we've read so far. So the first 2 ACOTAR books and the first 4 Throne of Glass books. We've done, some of them are, one of them is almost it's 3.5 hours long. It's extremely long. The one for this one probably won't be that long because it's going to be on Crystal's channel on August 31st. And sweet Crystal, she has a life and cannot be on a live show for 3.5 hours. So we'll hopefully be a little more succinct. But these have been so much fun. The gushing, the speculation, the talking through everything. It's been so great seeing people who've read these for the first time and are loving them the same way that I do. It just feeds my soul. So, I mean, no question, this was 5 stars. And yeah, I love it. Then I decided to continue a series that I started during the Romance Takeover Readathon, and I read the next novella in the Orc Prince trilogy. So I read Blood of the Orc Prince by Lionel Hart. This is a gay fantasy arranged marriage between an orc and an elf, and I'm sorry, they went through a lot in the first one, but they decided to stick it out together. And in the second one, we have found out some secrets about our orc prince, and him and his husband go on a little bit of a road trip to learn more about who the orc prince, I think his name, the way you say it, is Zorvert. Let me see. Yeah, Zorvit, I think is the orc's name. I have these bought in a bind up because you can buy the whole trilogy as one book from KU. But I'm, of course, counting each one as a separate book. This book definitely was a middle book. There was kind of stupid conflict between the two of them. Literally, they go to this place to help the orc learn about himself. And then the elf prince gets very frustrated. And he also is a bit too stupid to live. And I don't love that. I don't love when any character acts too stupid to live. And for me, Tegan was definitely portraying some of those elements of being too stupid to live, and it made me sad. I want him to be smarter than he was acting in this book. So this one ended up being a 3-star for me, and it was only a 2 on the spice scale, and I literally said this was extremely slow moving. Also, there was like magic happening, and a lot of it was hidden from us. Like, we didn't get to see it, and I was like, why are you doing that? Why are you hiding the magic? Let's not do that. So yeah, that was frustrating. Yeah, All right, then next I read Proof by Seduction by Courtney Milan. This is actually Courtney Milan's first published work. It was with Harlequin. Came out in 2011, I want to say it was. 2010. Okay, it came out in 2010. This book was our Rake Appreciation Society book for August. We were planning on doing a Kathleen Woodwist. We will do a Kathleen Woodwist. We need audiobooks. Crystal and I just need audiobooks to get through these, and so do a lot of our book club members. And we had heard last year that Kathleen's books were, like, her earliest books were going to be made into, like, unabridged audiobooks, because there are some audiobooks out there, but they're like 2 hours long because they're so abridged. And I was like, well, that can't be good. So those audiobooks have been pushed back until the beginning of 2023. So we still want to do one of Kathleen's books, but it probably isn't going to be until then. Just how it's working out, unfortunately. But we decided to throw this book in because we'd wanted to do a Courtney Milan, and I had happened to actually buy the first two books in her, like her first two books she's written. I had actually purchased them. Do I have the other one here? Here's the other one. This is the Carhartt duet. And so I was like, girl, let's read this, because there happened to be audiobooks for them, and we jumped on it. And I had no idea what to expect. I figured it would be pretty angsty, because though Courtney Milan's newest book, The Duke Who Didn't, isn't overly angsty, it's very sweet, very cozy book. The other books I've read by her have been very angsty, and so I thought this one might be. And this one is actually about a girl named Jenny who pretends to be a gifted, well, she's a gifted fortune teller from a humble background, but she's gifted because she's able to make herself be that. And then she comes up against Garrett Carhart, who is a bachelor and a scientist, and he feels like Madame Esmeralda. And there is some misuse of the Romani name in here. And Esmeralda, like, Jenny is pretending to be this. So just know that if that's something you're really sensitive to, like, okay, don't read this book. There was so much more to this book than that, and you can tell it's being used to, like, that's what she's pretending to be. So there's that. But anyway, she has been working with and helping Gareth's younger cousin Ned for quite a few years. And Ned had come to her on, like, he's very young, but he was contemplating suicide. And he came to her asking if he should live or not. And Jenny worked her magic and convinced him he needed to live because she saw a very bright and beautiful future for him. And I mean, that was a lie. She can't see the future, but she also believed that, like, he is a wealthy, like, you know, man of the aristocracy. He has everything in front of him. He's the heir to this Marquesdom, whatever that's called. And she'd been his friend for the past few years, but, you know, he's also been paying her for that. So Gareth finds out about this, and he wants to prove that she's a fraud. He also decides he wants to sleep with her. So this book has, like, the mistress trope, or more so, like, Gareth trying to get her to be the mistress trope, which is always what I don't love. This book, like, I'm not going to go into every bit because I'm going to, you know, like, share our live chat. We've already had this chat, and I don't want to retread all the ground for this one, but this was very angsty, and the hero was very frustrating until he wasn't, okay? This had one of the quickest turns by the hero. There's a certain, like, the heroine has basically been like, you want me to be your mistress? That's not what I want. I fought for 11 years. Like, the reason I became Madame Esmeralda was because I could either be a whore or someone's mistress or a prostitute, or I could find a way to make money where I am kind of whoring myself in a different way, but it's a way where, like, I'm in control. And now you're asking me to give up my income that I've created. I've created a niche for myself to be your woman until you're done with me, you know, which is why I don't like the mistress trope. And the hero just could not get this through his mind, you know, and it was extremely frustrating. And I was like, oh, this book is going to be a 3 because I hate this trope and this hero just making me bang my head. But I really loved Jenny. And this is something Courtney Milan has done in all the books that I've read. Her heroines are fully fleshed. They're complex. They're, you know, even morally gray a bit. I mean, Jenny is swindling people out of their money, but also those people are willing to pay to hear pretty lies from her, you know? So it's this interesting mix. And it was very frustrating for me. The hero has a moment of enlightenment that I believed it, because it was all things that he'd been hearing already and it just wasn't sinking in. And he has this moment of clarity. And then he has one of the most beautiful grand gestures I've ever seen. And I believed his turn. And some of the people in our group did not, and I understand. But both Crystal and I did. And I was just so happy because I was listening to this on audiobook when I was driving home to my family, and I cried the last 30 minutes. Literally, I was driving and like trying to get the tears out of my eyes because I was very moved by this story. So I ended up giving it 5 stars. It only had a 2 on the spice scale. It was very angsty, and I was past the point. I was like, wow, I wanted to give this a 4, but I think it's maybe a 3, and then it shot to a 5, and it was a 5, and I don't take it back. I loved it. Again, there's a trigger warning for the gypsy term, so know that. And then, yeah, it was very angsty. It's not gonna work for everybody. Okay, moving along. I got to read an arc of Mercy by Sarah Kate. Y'all know I have been devouring this series. We've been so lucky as to get this whole series this year. Sarah has teased that she has a few more stories in her pocket, but I don't know if when I get the physical book there will be a tease for what's coming next. But she didn't say when she will be continuing the series. But I got to do an interview with her on my friend Cheyenne's channel, and she had said that she had planned out 4 books from the beginning. Like, she felt like there was 4 books, but then she had thoughts for more of them, and I'm hoping that she does. But anyway, enough of that. Mercy comes out on the 23rd. It will be out on Tuesday, and I'm freaking excited for y'all to get this in your hands, okay? This one is like, I've been waiting for this since I read Praise. And when I read Praise, I knew, like, she had listed what the tropes were for all the books when I signed up for the arc. Because I read the arc of Praise. No one knew it was going to blow up the way it did. I'm so happy that everyone fell for it the way. And I saw that the trope for the 4th book was reverse age gap and best friend's son. And I just knew. I knew that of the owners of this club, Maggie was the only woman. She's in her 30s. And her best friend is Emerson, and Emerson has a son. Now, Beau, he's not necessarily a villain in Praise, but he is kind of spoiled, and he thinks very harshly of his father for his love of kink, and he's just not a great guy. He is 22 and he's spoiled and he's a bit of a whiny bitch. And in this book, he has friends now who are using the Salacious app, which there's an app that will like pair you with your, like, you take a kink quiz and it will pair you with other people on the app who've taken it and kind of say like, hey, your kinks align, you should try talking to each other. And first this was like an app, and then like there's the sex club that has been open where people can meet there if they want to. And Maggie gets talked into doing it. She's definitely more conservative of the friends. She's been a businesswoman, kind of like behind the scenes with Salacious, and she's never really gotten involved because she hasn't thought that she's kinky, and she hasn't thought that she would like want to be involved. But her girlfriends talk her into doing it. And also Beau at the same time gets talked into taking it by his friends. He does. And his says that he's a brat and he's a submissive. And it partially is because he has some self-degrading thoughts and he wants someone to like punish him like he does. And Maggie, she gets that she's a brat tamer and she's a dom. And she's like, I've never been bold enough to say what I want in bed, like, let alone be punishing someone. But the more she thinks about it, and when she starts chatting with this person who she doesn't know is Beau, they kind of connect. So they agree to meet at one of the masquerade nights at Salacious. And so they meet and then they go in a dark room together. And when it gets revealed who Maggie is making out with, she is horrified and runs away. And Beau pursues her a little bit. So anyway, that's enough of background of this. The point being, these two enter into a secret BDSM relationship where they're both figuring it out. And so this had a couple things that I absolutely love. It had people discovering their kinks and, you know, trying out toys, trying out BDSM implements, discovering their boundaries together, being very respectful of that. And it also had people doing a lot of research. Like our heroine does a lot of research about how she can be a good dom, how she can be safe, discovering, does she want to beat someone? Will she get pleasure out of punishing Beau? And she discovers that she definitely does. So this was great. This book also had pegging in it. That happens. And I loved it. I actually have a pegging recommendation video coming later this week because after I read this book, I was like, you know what? I love whenever pegging shows up. And it doesn't always have to be in a BDSM situation. Sometimes it's just people are bisexual. Sometimes they're not. They just enjoy whatever. And I actually have another book I'm going to mention that I picked up because it showed up on one of the pegging lists and I wanted to see if I liked it. But anyway, the only thing that was a detriment in this book for me, and it didn't end up being a like killer of it at all. Like I still gave this book 5 stars because I loved all the other things I've mentioned. And this is also her longest book. There's a lot of emotional things we have to deal with, both with Maggie's conservatism she grew up in and Beau's kind of self-hate and his struggle with his relationship with his father and struggling with like his masculinity because he wants to be submissive. Like what does that all mean to him? And those are questions that I feel like Sarah Kate always takes on in such a great way. You know, I've read quite a few of her books at this point, and I think she does that excellent. I think she does a great job. And the thing I didn't love is that these two keep this a secret until they're forced to tell. And they're like, Maggie's reasoning is like, your father will never forgive me. And Beau's reasoning is that he doesn't care if they know, but they're getting tired of being a secret kind of. And something happens where they're like forced to tell because of a scenario they end up in. And I just didn't love that. I wanted them to, like, you know, it's one of those things where they're like, we're going to tell everyone. And then something happens where they have to tell. And I really didn't love that. I wanted them to have the agency where they brought it forward and it wasn't like they got caught doing something. But I understand because Sarah Kate chose not to have this one have a third act breakup, which I loved because the other 3 books in this series did. And I hate third act breakup, like I really do. I mean, most authors do. I'm resigned to it because it's just a part of the romance genre at this point. Like you gotta have a dark moment and most people that has to be that. So like I liked that the anxiety about telling their family and friends wasn't enough to like break them up because, you know, the opposite happens in praise, like just spoiling that, like when they get caught out at what they're doing, it breaks them up because Emerson is like, oh no, I can't do this if it's going to mess things up. And in this case, they're like, we're going to stay together no matter what people think. So I really liked that a lot. I just didn't like that it was so far into the book. And so we didn't really get to like see how people reacted. It was like people found out and then it was over. But this was still a 5-star book and it was a 4 on my spice scale. And there aren't any major trigger warnings. I mean, Sarah Kate lists a few things that might be, but to me, there may be some like, you know, again, like the growing up and conservative having a bit of shame around stuff, but I don't know, to me that's nothing we're not used to as romance readers, so nothing really stood out to me as triggering for this one, but Sarah Kate does always list if there's anything you need to know. So all right, then this will be quick to talk about because I will have a dedicated video up about this book. So Moonrise by Inez Johnson. This is a paranormal romance. between a witch and a werewolf, and it's inspired loosely by While You Were Sleeping, which was a movie from the 90s that you may know of and love like I do. It's a holiday kind of, I watch it pretty much every holiday. But our heroine, Lucia, she was sheltered, and she lives on this like witch mountain. And like witches, they have something that's called like, it's kind of like Rumspringa for the Amish, but it's for witches, where they will go and, but instead for them, they'll go and basically like have a sexual awakening and like try to get pregnant, because they're a little bit like the Amazons, where they want to keep their children to themselves, and they're supposed to stay away from wolves, because wolves, they want to keep their mate and their children. And so if you get pregnant by a wolf, it can get really sticky because the wolves want to be around. And anyway, she leaves the mountain, but she's not leaving the mountain just for that purpose. She wants to try to find her father, who she's been told is a wolf. She's been told her father is wolf. And she remembers spending time with him before she ever ended up on the Witch Mountain or whatever. I'm just calling it Witch Mountain because it is. And anyway, she's on a train and she meets, is it Pierce, who is a wolf, and there ends up being an issue on the train and he ends up in a coma. And they'd had this connection, and she's only able to go with him into the hospital by saying she's his mate. Well, then Pierce's brother Jackson, who's a police officer, and he comes in and he immediately feels the mate connection with Lucia. And he's like, she's my brother's mate. Oh no. And he like runs away, because if two wolves love the same person, it can literally destroy a family or whatever. So he runs from that. But that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to tell you what my feelings were. I mean, you can find my rating on Goodreads if you want to, but this is going to be in a dedicated video for my patrons. It will be going up later this week, patrons who are watching this, because that's one of their benefits, is to get a pick video. This was picked off of the prompt, sibling, meant to be with your sibling. And I will say, like, that's not completely what this trope was, but I would have guessed that it was based on the name of it too. But anyway, yeah, I had interesting feelings about that one. We'll just say that. And I don't even know what I'm going to say in my video yet. So there's that. All right. Then I listened to Kingdom Fall by A. Zavarelli. I've had this audio on my Audible literally since it came out. This is one of the books in the Underworld Kings, which was like a collaboration with a bunch of authors who each wrote like a Mafia book within this world, basically. And this one was very interesting. This one is a nanny romance, sort of, within the Mafia. So we have Alessio, who's a single father, and then we have Natalia, who is actually a mute heroine. She had her vocal cords damaged. We don't know how in the beginning of this. And she speaks with ASL or with her phone using a voice projection app. And she gets hired to be the nanny for Alessio's son. Alessio is a like torturer for the Mafia, basically. And he has very strict rules for Natalia when she moves in. And he very much wants to keep away from her. He doesn't want to be distracted by a woman. This had some very interesting aspects to it, I will say. This was forced proximity because she's staying with there. He's a single parent. But there definitely is, we find out pretty much right away that Natalia is there to kill Alessio. And we don't know why or like what's going on with that, but she's there to kill him. And she's trying to come up with a way that she'll be able to do that. And her reasons may surprise you. So, I don't know. This book was good. It was hot. It also was heartbreaking in some places. This also has a secret virgin hero. So, how the hero has a son, I'll leave up to you to listen and find out. But I did have a good time with this book. And the twists and turns I wasn't exactly expecting. So I had a good time with this. This has mentions of a previous essay, and there is violence and gore in this book because it's Mafia, no one's surprised. Then I read Wed to a Wild God by Ruby Dixon. And this is the book, as I mentioned just a little bit ago, that was on a list with pegging in it. This is book 3 in the Aspect and Anchor series. And I knew that it was book 3, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to jump in anyway. I don't know if that was the smartest move. I think that I did miss a lot by not reading the first 2, even though, I still was able to figure it out. This was also my first book by Ruby Dixon that was this long. This was 460 pages. And from what I've seen, this whole series, these books are chunks. Okay, these books are chunks. Technically, I've read 2 books that are connected because The Spinster Bride and The Orc's Maiden Bride are connected somehow. It must be connected in ways that I don't know because I never saw any half orcs or orcs in what I was reading. But anyway, in this book, our hero is Kasim, don't know how to say this, and he is a god of hedonism, and he ends up dropped on Earth, and for him to stay there, he needs to have an anchor, and he touches Carly, who he is dropped in the middle of an alley outside of her work, and she goes up to him and she's going to help him up, and when she touches him, she has an instantaneous orgasm and she passes out, and I was like, whoa, what's going on? And so then we start to find out who he is and the fact that anytime he touches her, he can make her come, basically. She's able to find some, quartz rocks that by wearing this on her body, she can, control it. But she still feels very drawn to him. And so does everyone else. Everyone who sees Kasim wants to bang him or fuck him or get him away from her. And we find out that he wants to get back to his world, but he has somehow been dropped here. He's been booted out. And so is another god as well, who we run into later. And Carly is kind of unwillingly sucked into this because when she touched him, not only did she have extreme pleasure, but he is now bonded to her by touching her. And he can only stay in this world while she's alive, and basically she's they're forced into this forced proximity, and she's forced to I don't want to call not all the sex is forced in this. That's not what's happening, but there are times where when she doesn't have the quartz on her, he's giving her orgasms against her will. So there is a lot of dubious consent going on in this book because she's not in control of her body and she's not in control of what's happening. And she is really kind of forced to care about him and forced along the way. So this book was bonkers. I joined it for the pegging, not knowing that I was going to have to make it through 440 pages. Yes, the pegging is in the epilogue of this. Granted, it's some sexy pegging, but it is literally in the epilogue of this book. There are lots of fun, different kinds of sexy in here, but a lot of it is just he's overwhelming her with sex. And so there's lots of it, but none of it was I don't know, none of it was that fun because so much of it was just she's turned on because he's there. And it took a very long time for connection to pull between them. And it just didn't have some of the spark that I felt in other Ruby Dixons, even though she definitely has other books that literally the women are against their will horny for the guys. Ice Planet Barbarians is basically the whole thing. The cooey goes off and they feel horny for their dude. There's a lot of that that's kind of dubious, right? But anyway, I did end up it was okay. It wasn't as horrible as I thought it was going to be, but I don't know. I just expected more because I've loved so many of Ruby Dixon's books. And this one was just this was so long and there were so many repetitive scenes. There were so many scenes of him being oh, it's been an hour since we fucked. Let's do that again. And I'm just okay, that's enough. So I gave this 3.5 stars. And it was a 4 on the spice scale, surprisingly, because it honestly got boring. When the spice loses its excitement, it's time to tap out. So yeah, trigger warnings, dubious consent. And I also, I said, because she's basically drugged by him. She doesn't have a choice to be hot for him. And for me, that's not that fun to read about, It loses some of the spark. Okay, now we get to probably the most controversial book that I read for the week, and that is Pen Pal by J.T. Geisinger, which was one of my most anticipated / wary books I was wary of. And I do have an entire hour-long spoiler reading vlog for this, which I will link somewhere. And so I'm going to keep it mostly spoiler-free here because I put a lot of work into that vlog, and if you want to know the dirty details, you can go to that. There are going to be mixed opinions about this. I think more in like the booktuber community because, you know, the romance peeps were kind of sticklers when an author starts saying something has non-traditional HEA after the book has been marketed as dark romance since it was talked about, and it has a cover like this. You're expecting something particular when you go into it. And then when, you know, however though, when I heard what the book was about, when JT first started mentioning it, I was wary because I was like, this sounds like it might fit more along the lines of like Perfect Strangers, or, you know, I don't think this is going to be Queens and Monsters kind of happily ever after. And she started saying things like this has a non-traditional or unconventional HEA. And as a romance reader and reviewer, I start to have my like bullshit meter go off because I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? Because there's not only one way to have an HEA, but like for a book to be listed as romance, it has to have the HEA. That is an argument I will die on that hill. That doesn't mean it can't be fiction with a heavy romantic element or a thriller with a romance in it. Like, you know, because again, there are women's fiction that have an HEA, but the book doesn't focus on the romance. You know what I mean? Now, the thing with this is that this book does focus on a romance. And in my opinion, it ended with a happy ending. But it is non-traditional, and I think that, and you'll see this if you look at the reviews for this book, you will see there is a disparity. There are 1 and 2 star reviews, and there are 5 and 6 star reviews for this book. And it usually comes down to the point of people being like, you were marketing this as a dark romance, and it's not a romance, you know, like there's that. And I didn't know how to take that because I was trying not to hear too many spoilers because I was planning to read this no matter what, and I was going to vlog it. So I didn't want to hear it. I wasn't able to read this till Thursday. It came out on a Tuesday. I was inundated, like not just from friends, but from people who are waiting, who were like, Jen, I need to know what you think. I'm hearing lots of different things. You got to tell me. I only trust your opinion. Give it to me. And then I had people that were like, I want to rant to you about this. So I'm just like, I didn't know what to think. You know, I did know, okay, I'm going to go into this book expecting it to be a thriller because once JT started getting her ARC reviews in, she changed this to an erotic thriller and a psychological fiction, okay? And that pissed a lot of people off because she changed it. I'm like, she changed it, okay? She had it as dark romance and she changed it. Yeah, she didn't announce it. She didn't announce it. She did change it, okay? It's not listed as a romance anymore. And you know what, though? After I've read it, I understand why she was marketing as dark romance. There are going to be people who don't disagree with me. You're going to see my friends who don't agree with me about this, okay? I don't think that it should have been listed as a dark romance, okay? But I see why she listed it as dark romance. Why, to the author, she didn't have a problem with it. I don't think it was her trying to trick us, okay? But this book is a paranormal, psychological horror / thriller. And the horror element, I don't like lean heavy into that. Like some people said this was spookier for them than others. Like it wasn't overly spooky to me because they're like, it wasn't, but for some people it will be. So again, I don't think it should have been listed as dark romance, but I'm not mad at JT for listing it as dark romance after I've read it, because to me, I can see the lens of that. I still would have, from the jump, called it an erotic thriller with a heavy emphasis on the romance. Like, that's what I would have listed it as, okay? But I'm not ready to hang an author up by her toenails because she had it listed as dark romance after I've read it. Because it was dark and the romance was there, and at the end, I had a smile on my face and I felt justice for this couple, and I feel that they're together in an unconventional way. So I understand why she said this has an unconventional HEA, okay? Is it a bit of a trick? Kind of. This has a mystery. This has paranormal. This has, and again, if you want the spoiler thoughts on this, and know that my review of this is very emotional. I can barely talk at the end. I was sobbing because it was beautiful and it hurt, okay? This is angsty. Do I want to read another book like this tomorrow? No, I don't. Do I want to reread this book? Not really. I don't. It hurt. But knowing what inspired JT to write this and where it's coming from, I like it. I think it should have had a different cover. I think and I mean, I know this, she bought this cover when she was writing Savage Hearts. There is a teeny tiny tie to Savage Hearts, not a chronological or in the same world type of tie, but once you've read the book, you'll know, like, there's a teeny tiny connection to Savage Hearts. And so, like, this is the same model who's on the front of Savage Hearts. I think this book would have been better marketed if it had an item cover or it had a thriller type cover. You know, like if this had been someone's hand writing a letter that said like Dante on the front of it, I don't think that it misleads people quite the way that this does, because this book was trending at #1 in psychological fiction. When you go to the psychological fiction tab on Amazon, you don't see this type of cover. You see, you know, a spooky item cover or a house on a hill or, you know, something like that. So anyway, that was a rant. I know I didn't really say anything because I'm not going to. Because if I say anything, it's going to be a spoiler. If you want the spoiler, go check out the vlog. Give it some love. But that's my thoughts on it. And I gave it 5 stars. It is a 5 on the spice scale. This book has CNC and primal play. There's her, like, you know, I'm going to get you, bunny. A lot of people don't love the bunny pet name. I'm not a huge fan of it. But, like, he's the lion and she's the rabbit and he's chasing her down. I don't know. I love it because I love primal play. And I love when that gets put in there. There is some good, there's butt stuff in here. There's, like, it is hot for a good part. Like, you'll see it in my review or in my vlog when I'm reading. I'm like, wow, she's just piling on the sex. I know something painful is going to happen because she's really just trying to butter us up with all the sexy times. And I will say, like, I feel like she does try to, like, blind you with the smut in some. But because I knew it was paranormal, that becomes obvious right away. Like, there's paranormal stuff happening in chapter 1. So there's that. And then there is a mystery we're trying to figure out. There's psychological elements. And yeah, things are not what they seem. And some people, when they find out the twist, they feel like they've been tricked because it has the type of ending that you're like, fuck that. But I think she laid all the clues for that. And I do, like, if you watch my vlog, like, I do figure out what's going on. And so I think the clues were laid there. And just by hearing that it's paranormal, I had an idea what was going on. So anyway, that's my opinion. You're going to see lots of opinions about this. But to me, if you go in knowing, maybe don't expect an HEA, because again, that will be subjective if you think it has an HEA or not. Expect paranormal elements, expect it to be very spicy. I think that you'll have an okay time or maybe enjoy yourselves, right? The audiobook will be coming hopefully in October is what they said, and it will have Troy Duran who is doing it. And while I was reading it, I was absolutely hearing Troy's voice. He does all of the Queens and Monsters books. I was absolutely hearing his voice while I was reading it. So I may reread this in October because it does have the spooky element. I may reread it when the audio comes out. I will tell you the trigger warnings for this, so you know. There is miscarriage by domestic violence, not from the hero. There is murder. There's PTSD happening. There is CNC, like I said, primal play, anal stuff. There is a bit of a misrepresentation of mental illness. I saw what she was doing with it, but like critics of the book and some people, it made them uncomfortable of how a certain mental illness is portrayed in here. I think that it is unfortunate, but that has happened before what happens in here, okay? It has happened and it will happen again because people are human and mental illness is awful and I wish we could eradicate it, but we won't. So yeah, I've said my piece. I talked enough. And that was just like non-spoiler stuff. I know what I said was confusing. Again, please in this video, don't ask me, what do you mean by that, blah, blah, blah. If you want to know, go watch the video. I go into depth about what I mean and why I personally feel like it's an HEA, but I understand why people are hurt about it or feel tricked. Me personally, I felt happy where Kayla and Aiden ended together. And I felt hopeful for what was happening. So, all right. I'm glad I got a gush about that one because now I had a couple duds all in a row here. So I'm going to talk about this one very quickly because some people won't agree with me about my feelings, but I know some of you will because you've told me before that you appreciate my views on it. So I got to read an early release or an arc. I mean, it's kind of an arc, but like we don't have to review it because it's from Katie Roberts. So I got to read The Kracken Sacrifice. This is coming, I don't think this is coming till October, but I mean this cover, right? She is doing these clinch covers of the, you know, this is absolutely beautiful. It really is, of her dragon books. But, this book had something in it that was really disturbing for me. So anyway, this is a forced proximity. We have our Kracken, Thane, is a widower. This is Grumpy as Sunshine. The heroine is plus size. There are tentacles. They are both bisexual. There's also a they-them character and a Z-zer character. So we have all of that, like very good representation in this book, like Katie Robert does. She really put a lot of it in this one, just so you know, like there was a lot in this one. And I enjoyed that. One of the things about the Z-zer characters, I was like, I've never seen these pronouns like used in sentences and actually used while talking about Z-zer. Like, I don't even know how to do it when saying that. But I appreciated seeing that. And the character that is the Z-zer is kind of important to the hero, so we see Zir a lot. I think I did the right. Moving on. Anyway, this is our heroine, Catalina. She makes the deal with the demon. She's put in the auction with the other women, and she ends up getting purchased by Thane, or like chosen by Thane, and she has to do her 7 years with him, and he feels this weird attraction to her, but he's grieving. He's still grieving the loss of his mate, who was actually a man. They're both bisexual, by the way, like I said, but Zir, or he's not a Zir. Thane, he was married to a man for quite a while, but his mate has been gone for 5 years, and he's still grieving, and he's grumpy, and his heir is actually the Z-zer. And he plans for Zir to be the next king. He doesn't want to have children, and our heroine doesn't want to have children either. And so, but he's not planning to have sex with her, so they're not like worried about that or anything. And he gets her, and then he basically abandons her immediately because he doesn't want to be around her and feel the attraction. So that's what most of this is only 167 pages, right? Because these books are always really short that she does. And that is a big part of the problem too, even before the big issue that I had. It just felt like so much of the book was him staying away from her. And then he'd see her and he'd end up giving her pleasure somehow, you know, using a tentacle that can pulse, which is kind of cool. And his suckers that, you know, can touch things which is cool. And then he would be shameful that he did that and like run away. So there was only one. So here we're getting into it. And I'm going to tell you, spoiler now, that has to do with termination of a pregnancy. And I'm going to give you the spoilers and like why it bothered me. Okay. You already know abortion and miscarriage, any loss of a pregnancy or a child, it is a trigger for me. And Katie Robert lists all of her triggers. In fact, like I didn't even list my triggers for this one because she has like even more than I would ever consider a trigger. She has a full list, so you can check that out. But she had termination of pregnancy non-graphic listed as the trigger warning. And I'm going to tell you why I think that that is insufficient for what happened. So here's my spoiler tag for this. So again, they only have one full penetrative sex scene and they have it, we do it, and we realize that they never ended up getting her a birth control bracelet because in this realm, like you can just wear a bracelet for birth control, which is great. I love that. They weren't planning on doing this, so they just do it. The heroine is like, oh no, what if I'm pregnant from this? I can't have a baby. My mother was an abusive mother. It's too traumatic for me to think of having a child. And the hero is like, well, I wasn't planning to have a child either. I already have an heir, but we could do it. I mean, I care about you. I want you to stay with me here. I wouldn't keep your kid from you. Because that's part of the demon deal, is if you have a child with the demon, like it stays with them. Like that's part of the rules. He's like, I wouldn't keep you from our child. And the heroine starts saying, no, I can't. Get it out. Now I was like, oh, this is going to be the termination of pregnancy that's supposed to be non-graphic. I assumed wrongly that that meant it was in the past or something. You know, it's my own fault for assuming. You know what they say. But no, she just keeps saying, get it out. And then all these people start converging. They find a healer who is able to give her a medicine and knock her out, and then it will end the pregnancy and it will be fine. And Thane is like, what do I do? And his advisor comes in and is like, well, no matter what the situation, the best you can do is just be supportive. It's her choice. That's what's going to happen. And he's like, you're right. I'm going to do that. And this book is so short that all of this stuff with this termination of pregnancy, non-graphic, happens in 15 pages. She finds out she's pregnant. She's screaming, get it out. I can't be pregnant. Get it out. And the healer comes and does it. And then he's like, you're going to stay with me, right? And the book is over. So this is where I have the problem with it. Okay, this is where I have the problem. Number one, you all like, well, maybe you don't all know, but like, it's a trigger for me, abortion and loss of pregnancy. It just is. I'm never going to enjoy reading it. You know, whether like I'm pro-life for myself. I've talked about like I am pro-life, and when I'm reading a romance, I want romance and life and love and babies to come. I just do. To me, that's an HA. I know it's not for everybody. And I know, like, I'm already seeing it in reviews for this book. People were like, I thought it was done so well. And it just was really a slap in the face of anybody who thinks women shouldn't get to choose. And, like, all this stuff gets, like, thrown in that it was, like, very much slapping you in the face if you don't agree. And Katie Robert always says in her TikToks and her videos, my books aren't for people who think this or whatever. If you don't like it, don't read it. That is her right to say. It absolutely is. Do I think it's foolish to make that your hill to die on when you're a very successful author, which means hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people have read her books. I don't know. She's been writing a long time. It's very ignorant of you to assume that the millions of people that follow you automatically believe the things that you do. And it's not that an author can't put their beliefs in their books. They absolutely should. But to make it so much a slap in the face to just prove your point, and then stacking it up with all the reps she puts in a book, which again, I was liking. I was liking seeing these because I hadn't seen them like really used in a book in a while. Like I haven't read that and I was liking it. it just really felt like Katie Robert was giving a finger to anyone who doesn't exactly agree with it this way, because it just felt so shoehorned in there and unnecessary. It didn't even make sense why and how they were putting it. Like, why didn't they have some form of, like, you know, if they have a birth control bracelet, why didn't they have like a morning after pill in this magic realm or whatever? Why did it need to be a full, like, we need to put you under and have it removed? I don't know. It just spoiled the romance, which I already was rocky about anyway, because like I said, the hero was very much like white fanging her after every interaction. And I just felt like this book wasn't for me, and it completely soured the goodwill the book had towards me, because it was just so unnecessary, like how it happened, okay? I've read books with pregnancy termination before, and it's never triggered me the way this one did. And if Katie Robert is saying, don't read my books if you have these feelings, my books are not safe places for you, okay, I'm going to listen to you then. So, yeah, there we go. There's my spoilers on it, and I don't know. I always try to make this channel a safe space, so if you don't agree with me about that, like, that's fine. But keep your comments to yourself. I'm sharing with you what triggered me, the way that, like, I want to warn for you if it would trigger you. I think an author can share their beliefs and how they feel about things wherever they want. But this to me it was done in such a ham-fisted way. There was no finesse. There was no, like, this is what's best for us as a couple. Literally, the heroine was screaming, get it out, get it out. And I was just like, what are you saying with this? Like, I don't know. It just wasn't romantic at the end of the day then. Because then, like, literally the pregnancy termination happens, and 2 pages later, they're like, oh, I love you. And the book was over. So I was like, what's this? What was this? Was this? Anyway, okay, we're moving on because I'm almost at an hour. Holy shit. I read Candy Boys by Joe Raven. This was a menage. Jethro, Joel, and Candy. Candy works at a bookstore. Joel and Jethro are roommates. I can't remember which one. One of them is bisexual, but the other one has grown up in a really conservative home, so he doesn't want to be seen as a homo. They both end up meeting her at different times. They end up having a thing, and they all 3 end up together. It was fine. I give it a 3 star. It was a 4 on the spice scale. It had internalized homophobia and the use of the F word for gays, which I was not expecting. But that's in the hero's head, the internalized homophobia. He's saying those words in his head, just so you know. Then I read Much Ado About Dukes. I wanted to talk more about this book than I have, but again, we're almost at an hour. This book comes out on Tuesday as well. This is book 2 in the Never a Wallflower series. This is about a blue stocking heroine named Lady Beatrice, and she never wants to marry. And then there's the darkly handsome Duke of Blackheath named William Easton, who his brother is going to marry her cousin. And he's also determined never to marry because he doesn't believe in love, and women always want love. What he does believe in, though, is women's rights. And I really like that about him. He actually has some bills and things he's working on in Parliament where he wants women to have more rights. Although the heroine seems to think that he doesn't, and she takes every opportunity she can to preach at him. And he is wildly intrigued and aroused by her, which means he's got to stay far away because he doesn't believe in love. Then they become friends. He's actually teaching her how to box. There's a lot more going on, but like I said, I'm speeding up this conversation. And then something happens where they need to have a marriage of convenience. Not because of, like, compromise or anything, but because of something that happens in the heroine's, like, family and fortune, and she needs a husband. And they're friends at this point, so he's like, marry me, and we're friends. Then he completely ignores her for a bunch of the book. And then the heroine's in love with him. And then he's scared of love. And then she's like, then I guess I'm leaving you until you decide you can love me. Didn't love this. Gave it a 3. It had a 1.5 on the spice scale and a trigger warning for grief. And then the last one I want to mention is True North by J.B. Salisbury. This is the 3rd book in the North Brothers series. I liked the first one quite a bit. The second one was just okay. I was excited to read this one. This one's an office romance. The heroine is actually a like secretary for the hero's brother, even though like they all work at North Industries. And she actually has ADHD and she has some like trouble focusing. And Hayes, who is the brother who's her boss, he's in the legal department and he's an absolute asshole. He's horrible to her. He belittles her. He's rude to her. And at a party, she gets overwhelmed and she actually like ends up spilling coffee on him and he's so pissed. And then Hudson, who's the hero of this one, he comes up to talk to her and she thinks that it's Hayes. And so she kicks him in the balls because he like touches her and she's like, ah. And so she's sure she's going to get fired. And then she realizes that it's his twin brother that she had kicked instead. And she ends up working as his temporary secretary, and they go on a business trip together and they have forced proximity and they have this crazy tension. But then he doesn't want to put her in a bad spot. So he's like, no, we can't be together. We can't do it. But then when they get back, things boil over. So I know that was a shitty explanation, but the first half of this was kind of frustrating. It was forced proximity. The hero was giving her lots of mixed signals. The hero's brother is just absolutely horrible. I will be very interested for his book because there is actually some good setup for Hayes's book. I love a villain turned good. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll see. I did end up giving it 4 stars. Once they got together, it was super spoony. This one didn't have a third act breakup, so I like that, which is good because they had enough conflict in the first half of the novel. Sexy times were really good. I liked seeing a heroine with ADHD, and when she's able to find her strengths and what they are, I really enjoyed it. So I gave this one 4 stars, and it had a 3 on the spice scale. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching this video. I put up new videos 3 to 4 times a week. Thank you to my patrons and channel members who keep the lights on and help me keep doing this. And yeah, let me know which of these books you're excited to read. And if you make it to the end, give me a blue heart. That's what I want. Give me a blue heart. All right. I love you all. Have a great day. Bye.